The email hit her inbox at 4:27 p.m., just as she was signing the biggest contract of her career. Her hands froze mid-signature, the pen hovering above the crisp white paper like a bird caught in an invisible storm. The room around her, a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown, seemed to blur into something distant and unreal. She blinked once, twice, then clicked open the message. It wasn't even personalized. No dear name, or any attempt at softening the blow. Just cold corporate speak. As part of our ongoing restructuring efforts, your position has been eliminated effective immediately. Effective immediately. Those words punched through her chest like a sledgehammer. Her breath hitched, but she forced herself to keep reading. There were instructions about returning company property, severance details buried in legalese, and a link to schedule an exit interview that felt more like a formality than anything else. And there it was, the final gut punch, a note thanking her for her contributions over the years. Contributions? Years? They couldn't even be bothered to send this news face-to-face. Not after everything she had done for them. Across the table, the client cleared his throat. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. He must have noticed how still she'd become, how her knuckles turned white gripping the edge of the table. She forced a smile, one that probably looked more like a grimace, and nodded. "Fine," she said, though her voice cracked halfway through the word. "Just fine." She signed the contract with trembling hands, pretending nothing was wrong while her world crumbled beneath her feet. Outside, the city buzzed with life, cars honking, people rushing past, but inside, all she could hear was the deafening silence of betrayal. Later, back at her apartment, she stared blankly at her laptop screen. The same device she'd used countless times to draft proposals, analyze data, and climb the corporate ladder now seemed alien to her. Alien because it no longer belonged to her. It belonged to the company that had discarded her without so much as a phone call. Or maybe it still belonged to her. They hadn't mentioned confiscating personal devices, only work-issued ones. That thought made her laugh bitterly. What difference did it make when they'd already taken everything else? She opened her browser, not entirely sure what she was looking for. Maybe answers. Maybe revenge. Whatever it was, she needed something to fill the void left behind by their impersonal dismissal. As she scrolled absent-mindedly, her eye caught a familiar logo, the company's website. Clicking on it felt almost involuntary, like some unseen force guiding her movements. The homepage greeted her with its usual polished facade, smiling employees posing under banners proclaiming innovation and teamwork, mission statements promising excellence and integrity. Lies. All lies. And then she saw it, a small notification icon blinking in the corner of her screen. Updates waiting to sync from her work account. She hesitated for a moment before clicking on it. Why shouldn't she? They owed her that much. Maybe more. What unfolded next sent chills down her spine. Financial reports, internal memos, strategy documents, all still accessible despite her termination. She shouldn't have been surprised. Tech glitches happened all the time, especially during layoffs. But this wasn't just carelessness, it was negligence bordering on arrogance. Did they really think someone who had given years of their life to the company wouldn't notice? Wouldn't care? One document caught her attention, a spreadsheet detailing bonuses awarded to top executives over the past year. Bonuses handed out mere months before massive layoffs, including hers, were announced. The numbers were staggering, obscene even. While she was scrambling to figure out how to pay rent next month, these people were raking in six-figure payouts for doing what exactly? Sitting in meetings? Making decisions that destroyed lives? Anger bubbled up inside her, hot and unrelenting. For years, she had poured her heart into this company, working late nights, sacrificing weekends, believing the promises they whispered in her ear about growth and opportunity. And this is how they repaid her loyalty? With a soulless email and a slapdash severance package? But anger quickly gave way to something sharper, colder. Determination. If they thought they could treat her like disposable trash, they were dead wrong. She might not have power anymore, not officially, but knowledge was its own kind of currency. And right now, she held enough information to bring the entire house of cards tumbling down. The first step was subtle. Almost too subtle to notice. A minor tweak here, a slight adjustment there. Numbers shifted ever so slightly in quarterly reports. Nothing drastic, just enough to raise eyebrows if anyone bothered to look closely. Which, of course, they didn't. Not until it was too late. It started with sales projections. She nudged them upward by a fraction, just enough to create unrealistic expectations. Executives lapped it up, eager to present rosy forecasts to shareholders. Then came inventory discrepancies. Small errors scattered across warehouses, leading to shortages of key products. Customers complained, orders went unfilled, and trust began to erode. Still, no alarms rang. Not yet. Next, she turned her attention to marketing campaigns. Ads targeting demographics that didn't exist, promotions designed to fail spectacularly. Social media backlash followed swiftly, hashtags trending for all the wrong reasons. Again, no one connected the dots. How could they? To them, it was just bad luck. Bad timing. Never incompetence. Each action fueled her resolve. Every keystroke reminded her why she was doing this, not just for herself, but for everyone else who had been betrayed by a system rigged against them. Co-workers laid off via mass emails. Contractors ghosted after finishing projects. Interns dismissed without references. Their stories echoed in her mind, driving her forward even as doubt crept in. Doubt was dangerous. It whispered questions she didn't want to answer. Was this justice or vengeance? Did it matter? Could she stop before things spiraled completely out of control? The truth was, she didn't know. All she knew was that stopping felt impossible. Like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing you should turn back but unable to resist taking one last step forward. Meanwhile, her life outside the digital battlefield unraveled further. Friends tried reaching out, offering support, but she pushed them away. Explaining her actions would mean admitting to herself what she was truly capable of, and she wasn't ready for that. So she isolated herself, retreating deeper into the labyrinth of code and conspiracy. Her apartment became both sanctuary and prison. Takeout containers piled up in the kitchen, laundry overflowed from the hamper, and dust settled thickly on surfaces untouched for weeks. Yet her laptop remained pristine, glowing softly in the dim light like a beacon calling her home. Home to the chaos she controlled. Home to the destruction she orchestrated. Sleep eluded her. Nights stretched endlessly, punctuated by bursts of activity as she monitored reactions to her latest moves. Stock prices dipped. Investors panicked. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Through it all, she watched, detached yet exhilarated. This was power unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Raw. Unfiltered. Terrifying. Yet amidst the adrenaline-fueled highs, moments of clarity surfaced unexpectedly. Late one night, as rain drummed against her windows, she found herself staring at old photos saved deep within her computer files. Smiling faces from team outings, celebratory dinners marking project milestones, candid shots taken during office holiday parties. Memories of a time when she believed in the dream they sold her. When she trusted the people who ultimately betrayed her. Tears welled up unbidden, blurring the images until they became indistinct shapes on the screen. She wiped them away angrily, ashamed of her weakness. Weakness got you fired via email. Weakness let them win. But the ache lingered, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. Word reached her eventually. Whispers of investigations launched, fingers pointed, blame assigned. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, desperate to salvage whatever scraps of reputation remained. Some resigned quietly, others fought back vehemently, but none escaped unscathed. The empire she had helped build teetered precariously on the brink of collapse. And still, she pressed on. Each revelation, each scandal exposed, brought her closer to an endgame she barely understood herself. Revenge? Justice? Redemption? Perhaps all three intertwined in ways she couldn't untangle. Or perhaps none at all. Only time would tell. For now, she kept moving, kept pushing boundaries, kept testing limits. Because stopping meant confronting truths she wasn't prepared to face. Stopping meant surrendering to the very forces she sought to dismantle. And surrender was never an option. As the chaos mounted, she began to notice cracks forming, not just in the company's foundation but within herself. The thrill of control, the rush of seeing her plans unfold, had started to sour. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. She thought vengeance would taste sweet, like biting into ripe fruit after a long drought. Instead, it left a bitter residue on her tongue, clinging to her thoughts and haunting her dreams. Her days blurred together, each one marked by another calculated strike against the company that had betrayed her. But now, every action felt heavier, more deliberate. Where once she acted with instinctive fury, she found herself hesitating, questioning whether the next move was necessary, or if it was simply cruel. Late one night, as she sat hunched over her laptop, an email notification popped up from an unknown sender. Her heart skipped a beat. Had they traced her? Was this the moment everything unraveled? With trembling fingers, she opened the message. It wasn't from the company, it was anonymous, sent through a secure server. The subject line read, "You're not alone." The body of the email was brief but chilling. "I know what you've been doing. You're playing a dangerous game, but I understand why. I've seen how they operate. Let me help you finish what you started." She stared at the screen, her pulse pounding in her ears. Who was this person? An ally? A trap? Or someone else who had been wronged by the same machine that crushed her? Part of her wanted to delete the email immediately, sever any connection before it spiraled out of control. But another part, a darker, more desperate part, wanted to respond. To trust. To believe she wasn't entirely alone in this fight. Before she could decide, another notification flashed across her screen. This time, it was news coverage. A major outlet had picked up the story about the company's plummeting stock value, citing insider sources claiming systemic corruption at the highest levels. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through the article. Names were being named, accusations flying like shrapnel. Some of these people she knew personally, people she'd once admired, even trusted. Now their faces were plastered alongside words like fraud and mismanagement. For a fleeting moment, satisfaction surged within her. This was what she had worked toward, wasn't it? Exposing the truth, holding them accountable for their greed and negligence. Yet instead of relief, all she felt was unease. These weren't faceless villains. They were human beings with families, careers, lives outside the boardroom. Lives that would be irrevocably altered by her actions. Was justice worth collateral damage? Her phone buzzed incessantly, pulling her attention away from the screen. Messages poured in from former colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers who recognized her name in leaked documents. Some praised her as a whistleblower, a hero taking down a corrupt system. Others condemned her, accusing her of betrayal and sabotage. She didn't respond to any of them. What could she say? That she wasn't sure anymore where the line between hero and villain lay? That maybe she'd crossed it weeks ago without realizing? Sleep became impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw their faces, the executives sweating under interrogation lights, the mid-level managers scrambling to save their jobs, the interns packing up their desks with tears streaming down their cheeks. Faces she had helped create, destroy, or ignore altogether. Faces she couldn't escape no matter how hard she tried. One morning, exhausted and hollow, she stepped onto her balcony overlooking the city. The sun rose slowly, painting the skyline in hues of gold and pink. Below, life moved forward as usual. Cars honking, pedestrians rushing to work, coffee shops bustling with early customers. None of them knew the storm brewing above their heads. None of them cared. She leaned against the railing, gripping it tightly as conflicting emotions warred within her. On one hand, there was pride, an undeniable sense that she had accomplished something monumental, something no one else dared to do. On the other, there was guilt, gnawing at her insides like acid. Pride and guilt, they coexisted uncomfortably, refusing to cancel each other out. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her back to reality. Another anonymous message, this one shorter than the last. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. Rooftop of the old factory downtown. Come alone. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Anonymous meetings sounded like plot devices from bad spy movies, not real life. But curiosity got the better hand of her fear. Whoever this person was, they clearly knew things about her, and possibly about the company, that she didn't. If nothing else, meeting them might provide answers to questions she hadn't allowed herself to ask. The old factory loomed ahead of her as midnight approached, its silhouette jagged against the starless sky. Once a hub of industry, it now stood abandoned, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. She parked her car a block away, checking her rearview mirror twice before stepping out. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog. As she climbed the rusted staircase leading to the rooftop, Every creak of metal beneath her feet made her flinch. By the time she reached the top, her nerves were frayed, her senses heightened. The rooftop stretched wide and empty, illuminated only by the pale glow of streetlights filtering through the haze. And then she saw him. A man stood near the edge, his back to her, silhouetted by the city lights. He turned slowly as she approached, revealing sharp features and piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through her. His expression was unreadable, neither friendly nor hostile. "You came," he said simply, his voice low and measured. "Who are you?" she demanded, crossing her arms defensively. Despite her bravado, her heart raced. He smirked faintly, as though amused by her caution. "Let's just say I'm someone who understands your situation." "My situation?" she echoed, narrowing her eyes. "What do you know about my situation?" "Enough," he replied cryptically. "I know you've been dismantling the company piece by piece. I know you have access to information most people wouldn't dare touch. And I know you're starting to doubt whether this is worth it." Her breath hitched. How did he know that? Had he been watching her? Following her? The thought sent a chill down her spine. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steadier than she expected. "I want to offer you a choice," he said, taking a step closer. "You can keep going down this path, burning bridges until there's nothing left. Or you can walk away now, let someone else finish what you started." "Finish it?" she repeated, incredulous. "You mean take credit for my work?" "No," he said firmly. "I mean make sure the truth comes out, in full. Without dragging innocent people into the wreckage. Without destroying yourself in the process." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. For weeks, she had convinced herself that exposing the company's corruption justified the collateral damage. But hearing it laid bare stripped away her defenses, forcing her to confront the reality of what she'd done, and what she might still do. "And if I say no?" she challenged, though her voice wavered slightly. "Then I'll leave you to it," he said with a shrug. "But remember this, revenge isn't justice. Sometimes, letting go is the hardest thing you'll ever do." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. She stood frozen, staring at the spot where he had been moments earlier. His words echoed in her mind, relentless and unyielding. Back home, she collapsed onto her couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. The weight of her choices pressed down on her chest, suffocating yet strangely liberating. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine walking away. To stop before the final domino fell. To reclaim whatever fragments of her old life remained. But could she really do that? Could she turn her back on everything she had fought for, knowing the cost others had paid along the way? The next morning, sunlight streamed through her apartment windows, casting long shadows across the cluttered room. She sat at her laptop, staring at the screen but not really seeing it. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly. The decision before her felt monumental, like standing on the edge of a precipice with two vastly different paths stretching out below. She thought about the man on the rooftop, his cryptic words still lingering in her mind. "Revenge isn't justice." It was a simple sentence, yet it carried the weight of truth she couldn't ignore any longer. Revenge had consumed her, driving every action, every keystroke, every sleepless night. But now, as the dust settled and the wreckage became visible, she realized something. Revenge hadn't healed her pain. If anything, it had deepened it. Her gaze drifted to the stack of old photos on the coffee table, smiling faces from team outings, candid shots of late-night brainstorming sessions, moments of camaraderie and connection. Those memories weren't erased just because the company had betrayed her. They were real, tangible pieces of who she used to be. And maybe, just maybe, they could still guide her forward. Taking a deep breath, she opened one last document, a draft email she'd been working on for days. It contained everything, evidence of corruption, names of those involved, details of schemes that had cost employees their livelihoods. This was her insurance policy, her final weapon. With one click, she could send it to every major news outlet, regulatory agency, and whistleblower platform. The fallout would be catastrophic. Instead, she deleted it. Her finger hovered over the send button for what felt like an eternity before she dragged the file to the trash icon and emptied the recycle bin. Watching it vanish gave her a strange sense of relief, as though a heavy chain had been lifted from her shoulders. For so long, she'd clung to anger, letting it define her actions. Now she chose something else, clarity. But walking away didn't mean staying silent. She opened a new document and began typing, not accusations or exposés, but truths. Simple, undeniable facts about the company's practices, written without malice or embellishment. When she finished, she saved the file to a secure cloud server and sent the link to trusted journalists known for ethical reporting. Then she drafted a resignation letter addressed to the board of directors, explaining her reasons for leaving and urging them to do better, for the sake of the people who remained. It wasn't vengeance, it was accountability. Days passed, and the world moved on. Headlines blared with revelations about corporate misconduct, investigations launched, and executives resigned under pressure. The company teetered on the brink of collapse, its reputation tarnished beyond repair. Through it all, she stayed quiet, watching from the sidelines as the storm played out. In the weeks that followed, she rediscovered parts of herself she'd forgotten existed. She reconnected with friends who had reached out during her darkest hours, apologizing for shutting them out. She cleaned her apartment, piece by piece, until it felt like home again. Most importantly, she allowed herself to grieve, not just for the job she lost, but for the person she had been before bitterness took hold. One evening, as she walked along the waterfront, she received a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "It's me," came a familiar voice, the man from the rooftop. "I saw the news." She smiled faintly, leaning against the railing overlooking the water. "Yeah, I figured you might." "You did good," he said after a pause. "Better than I expected." "I didn't do it for you," she replied, her tone light but firm. "No, you didn't," he agreed. "But sometimes doing the right thing means more than we realize." They talked for a while longer, sharing fragments of their stories and finding unexpected common ground. By the time they hung up, she felt lighter, as though a chapter of her life had finally closed. Months later, she found herself sitting in a small cafe, sipping coffee and reviewing a proposal on her laptop. This time, though, the work was different. She had started consulting for nonprofits and startups, helping organizations build ethical frameworks and prioritize transparency. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't lucrative, but it filled her with purpose in a way her old job never had. As she glanced around the cozy space, she noticed someone approaching her table. It was the client she had signed the big contract with on the day she got fired. He smiled warmly, extending a hand. "I heard what happened," he said. "I wanted to thank you for everything. Your work inspired us to rethink our own partnerships." Her cheeks flushed with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," she murmured. "That means a lot." When he left, she leaned back in her chair, watching the sun filter through the windows. Life had changed irrevocably since that fateful email, but she no longer feared the uncertainty ahead. She had faced her anger, confronted her pain, and chosen a path rooted in integrity rather than destruction. And for the first time in years, she felt truly free.